and welcome to this episode of the Corporate Escapists TV show and podcast. I am your host, Christine, and I have to say how freaking amazing it is to have you on the show, the most beautiful person in the world, Miss Suzanne Read. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you, Christine. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, I have been so blessed to have you sort of like in my circle, and we've sort of known each other and got to experience your magic at retreats. And like you are just one of the most beautiful, nurturing human beings, and like really honored to, just to get to know you and to experience what you do.
Oh, look, thank you, Christine. Just as you were saying that, I was kind of like just reflected back 20 years ago of the woman that I was.
Mhm.
And although I think I've always been caring and probably sometimes too loving, I think my experience over the last 12 years has really changed who I am. And I just have a lightness now that I never thought that I could, which is then obviously taking me into the work that I do now, which is holding people in their grief.
Yeah. So most people who know watching the show, I get so carried away. I get so freaking excited about my guests that come on. So I'm going to hand it over to you. I'm going to let you introduce yourself properly and let people know of all the magic gifts that you actually share with this world. And then we can dive into some beautiful conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Christine. 12 years ago, very unexpectedly, my husband and I had just been on an amazing 40th birthday holiday to Mexico. We were planning that we were going to buy a villa in Mexico, and I was working corporate, he was working corporate. We had amazing jobs. We hadn't had children, but it was still on the radar. But when we got back from that amazing holiday, he started to decline in his health. He went and did this like half marathon, ultra, I don't know, fitness thing. But when he came out of it, he was really, really sick. And what we then found out on the 13th of September 2013, he was rushed to hospital. I was actually in Bundaberg working and I'd been away all week. I had told him to go and get blood tests. On the 14th of September, he was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia. So it was a huge shock to both of us. Through the next 6 years, we always held hope that at some stage he would survive this. It was very aggressive. It was like kind of the worst leukemia that you can get. But he was a fighter and he was fit. And the doctor said that, there was 25% chance that all people would get through, or people do get through that type of leukemia. He started to relapse in that next year and he had a bone marrow transplant that nearly took his life. But again, he went into remission. But 2.5 years later, he then got the leukemia back again. He then relapsed another two times. And then, unfortunately, on the 10th of June 2019, he lost his fight. His body was just so consumed with cancer. We think he had secondary cancers. I never got them tested because, there was no point. And so then, at 46 years of age, I became a widow. 6 months before that, we'd moved to this beautiful property, which I still live at in Kenilworth, 2 hours north of Brisbane. And so here I was, up here on 35 acres. I had a dog and some chickens, and my husband had died. And it was never part of the story. The part of the story, which is why we moved up here, was that he would survive and we'd host survival retreats and, have this beautiful property that would foster health and wealth and a lifestyle that we could both live quite successfully. But that wasn't to be. 3 months after he died, I made the decision to resign from my corporate life, and a lot of people around me were really shocked about that. But I just didn't have the tolerance anymore. I was working in a position that had thousands of people, hundreds of millions of dollars of budgets. It was a job that I needed to travel. I had to go to Brisbane, and I was just like, I'm done. I can't even barely hold space for myself right now. even 3 months after he'd passed away, I don't think I'm ever going to be able to do that kind of job again. So I quit the job. A friend said to me at the time, just take 12 months off, Suzanne. Don't worry about working. You'll find your path. I did do that, but I never went back to your typical job. I then blossomed into, well, let's build the dream. We bought this property up here in Coolabine to actually build cabins and have that retreat space. Why don't I go ahead and do it? So 3 years later, I'm here. My business is about to open or have its 12-month anniversary next month, which is super amazing. And then I've also built another business, which is Life Beyond the Grief. And that's where I hold space and just allow people through my own experience, through the healing that I've done, through the practices that I've learned, through the coaching that I've got, to actually then help others heal and allow them to actually live a life and believe they can live a life even though they're still grieving, because grief sits in you forever. There's days that still are very heavy for me, that bring a lot of sadness. Last weekend, I was at the Women's Wellness Festival. I'm doing a grief session, and it was the 13th of September. So it was 12 years to the day since my husband was rushed to hospital. The next day, I'm at the Women's Wellness Retreat, again, holding space for ladies that had just lost their husband 7 weeks ago, had lost a child recently. And that was the date that, my late husband had been diagnosed with leukemia. So it's really interesting how these anniversaries come up, but I always seem to be in the right space with the right people, with the right community to then be able to hold space for others. So it's
So
been a
true.
journey.
It definitely has. And, one of the things, I think whenever we've gone through certain things in life, we obviously now have the ability to have so much compassion for humanity. And, that a lot of people don't see it as a gift at that time, but it's now a gift that you now get to pay it forward, to
Mm,
so many other people. And, to hold space for somebody going through that immense emotion, because like you said, it comes and goes, and you think you're good, and then you see something, you smell something, you hear something, and
yeah.
it just sets it off. And a lot of people go, well, how long is this going to last for? But it's infinite because of the
Mm,
love that you've shared to that human being.
yeah, it is, Christine. And I didn't understand that. Like when I was given the title widow, I didn't know any other widows. Like widows to me were in their late 70s, 80s. And it was unfortunate if somebody had lost their husband in their 60s or lost their wife. There was nobody in my age bracket. There was nobody I worked with. I didn't have a community of people. I knew some people, and I would then end up knowing some people that would lose their husbands from the same disease. But even then, they were older than me, and I just did not know how to manage grief. I knew that there was going to be probably a lot of crying. I knew that there would be some hard days. I was expecting that there'd be times where I couldn't get out of bed or didn't want to have a shower, or, then there were other days where I just drink excessively just to get through the pain. But I didn't realize it was going to last for as long as it did, especially in the deeper grief stuff. And that after year one, year two is actually the hardest year after loss, because everybody who's in your community around you, they're empathetic towards you, they want to care and love you, but they go on to living their life. And that's not saying that they're not good people. They are very good people. I had a beautiful support community around me. but they have to go back to their normal lives. They can't keep coming 2 hours north of Brisbane to see Suzanne because she's still deep in grief. And then Suzanne starts to hide it in year two, right? So I started to hide it. I started to drink even more heavily. Things just started to happen that, you put on weight, you don't want to exercise anymore. There's just this total flow on effect. I'm kind of half lucky because I don't live anywhere near takeaway shops. So I didn't go the full junk food on the couch. But there were days that, I'd be saying to my mum, yeah, no, I'm okay, I'm okay. And she'd be saying, are you really okay, Suzanne? Because all my family lived in Melbourne and they still do. And I'd be like, no, I'm okay. I'm tired. I haven't had a good night's sleep. But the good night's sleep I never had. There was all going to sleep was the hardest part of the day. Going to lie in that bed, that king size bed that has this beautiful view, and I'm not sharing it with anyone. Lucky I had my dog and he would sleep on the bed with me. But even there were times he was crying with me, and I'm like, oh my God, this is just horrendous. Nobody told me that this is going to be this bad.
Mm. One thing I've been talking a lot about is that when we start to share our stories, we need to share it from a healed, empowered place. And I
Mm.
know that with grief, I don't know whether or not you're ever fully healed because there's always different layers that are actually going to come. But what sort of helped you to now be able to, share this story with such empathy and grace, but it's a very empowered place, because when you share it from empowered, that's when you get to make the impact,
Mm.
because we're
Mm.
not sitting in that victim mentality anymore.
Yeah, exactly, Christine. I'd say that when I look back, and I call this the foundation. So this is the foundation of who I've always been. I've always been, I held a very important job in corporate. I was there for 25 years. I was well respected. I didn't get there, and I wasn't able to do the things I did without having a level of resilience, a level of empathy, because there was lots of empathy that was needed in that job. There was a strength, there was courage. So I had these underlying traits that and through that corporate world, I'd also been, bullied, and I wrote one of my books on that. So I think that gave me the foundation to then say, I'm never going to give up. And although I had a couple of moments where I was after a really big drinking session, I was driving home from Brisbane, and I did take myself to the Nambour Hospital. I thought I was going to run up myself off the road and kill myself. I had those really dark demon thoughts, and had it a couple of times here on the property as well. But there was still a rational mind within me, and there was still a fight and a hope, and I still had a dream that even before my husband had died, I wanted to fulfill it. But you know, there is a level that you've got to go, well, what else? How am I going to cope through this? And I engaged a holistic counselor to actually then help me through that deep seated pain, that deep, those questions that I had at night, whether I still wanted to be here, whether, my journey was to actually be with him, and how do I actually then navigate that? And then there was falling out of family on his side of things. Like you said, the layers keep coming, there's relationship fallouts, there was financial heartache at one stage. So all these other little things I could not have actually then dipped back in and attached myself to that resilience and that courage again, unless I had that right support mechanism around me. So that holistic counselor, which I still see today, she's such a beautiful woman, 5 years on, and we still have great chats because, life is challenging at the best of times. Every human goes through grief. It mightn't be as deep, and it might not be as challenging as losing a partner or a child, a mother, father, whatever it looks like. But we still go through grief. And so by having her around, that allowed me to then start to, one, heal a lot of the guilt and the shame a lot of the pain, the hurt, the anger, because there was a lot of anger as well. Like, why did you die? Why am I here? Why are you putting me through this? And so obviously that brought on a lot of guilt and shame and, emotion. But then on the flip side, I then also too then engaged two amazing coaches, which Diane and Michelle from those two sisters, and then they started to energetically heal me. So I had the healing of the pain, the emotion, the grief part from Pauline. And then I had the beautiful energetic, they're going to take me out of this. They're going to actually allow me to believe in myself, believe that I can build these businesses, believe that I can step back into a relationship again, because that was really important to me. One of the things that really hurt me in year 3 was not having somebody with me. I missed affection, I missed love. Um, and so, all through that 3-year period after he died, I put the right communities in place to then allow me to use that foundation to then step into a healing space, to then believe in myself, and then basically create my dreams and make them come true.
I love that so much. I literally just did a post, a little video before, saying that your vibe attracts your tribe, but your tribe can
Mm.
also affect your vibe. And I think it's really essential
Oh.
that in any situation we're in, like, we have to just be really mindful, because some people are just like, we've outgrown them, or they may
Mm.
not be able to resonate, on the journey. And I think, we've spoken a lot about identity shifts, and, with everything that you've been through, you're a different person to who you are. And I don't think that we could
Mm.
ever be who we were beforehand, because of that momental sort of change that's happened in our life. And a lot of people can't accept the new version either.
Oh, totally, Christine. So, the one thing that started to become apparent probably in year 2, especially going into year 3, was that yes, I was becoming a different person, and I had to, because if I wanted to hold on to, and this is how I reference it, Suzanne Gomes, so that was my married name with Robert. If I was to hold on to Suzanne Gomes, well, one, it was really challenging. There was lots of emotional, like, why am I the way I am? What is causing this? And the sisters actually allowed me to understand that I needed to let go of that part of the identity, because it wasn't serving me. It was causing me pain, it was causing me suffering. There was a lot of relationships that were associated to Suzanne Gomes that again weren't serving me. Some of them were toxic, some of them were just painful, some of them basically hadn't grieved Suzanne Gomes. And so that's the other part, right? Is because your friends and your community around you, as you're going through this transition to actually then build a new identity that is outside of that person, is that they are like, no, I want Suzanne Gomes. I want her to still be here. She was the fun loving. She was the one that we'd go out partying. She was the one that always was there for everybody else. She was the one who gave so much love and care and affection. And I'm like, I can't give any more love, care, and affection. I don't want to party like that anymore. I don't want to, because my drinking had gone to another level when Robert died. I wasn't just going out to party, I was going out getting absolutely blind drunk, not knowing how to actually get home to hotels, doing some really stupid, embarrassing things that I've had to forgive myself for. She can't exist, because if she still exists, then she's on a like crash course. Like, she is just going to, this is going to end in tragedy. So then you find yourself, and you start to pull in all this new community, and the healing then softens your heart. And I was very upfront. I know I've lost a couple of friendships because their person then got really sick. One of them in particular got cancer. And I couldn't hold space for them. I couldn't be there for them. The triggering of what it did for me, I was just like, I can't do this. I'm still trying to hold myself. I can't step back into holding somebody else that might possibly have the same outcome as me. As long I know that I need to, they want me to, but I can't. And so I created new boundaries, which then lost relationships. It put some tension in other relationships. It took, and then you go through that healing, right? Because now you've got your counselor and I've got my coaches, and they're now helping me get through that relationship grief because I'm a new person. They haven't changed. The process that I'm going through is growth and evolvement and transformation, and they're still living their life in their same house with their family structure, and everything's, kind of like hasn't really changed. Here I am, new relationship, becoming a stepmom. People are really not understanding why I even chose my new husband some days. And it's like, well, that's because I'm Suzanne. And at that time, for probably about 2 years, Christine, I just said, I'm Suzanne. I don't have a new personality type. Now that I've remarried and I'm Suzanne Read, I especially know who I am. And it's very clear of what I stand for now, which is probably the strongest that I've ever recognized in my whole life. I've never loved myself so deeply. I've never been so passionate and pure in my essence. I've never stood up for myself to the point that I do today. And I have a new family, which obviously, brings in a whole new set of, love, but also challenges. She's just transformed. And so, yeah, that last 3 years has been a lot of grief on top of the mourning of my late husband.
Yeah. When you look back now, obviously you've had your counselor, you've had coaches, a new community around you. What has been the gift that you've seen in yourself, that you've given yourself?
Oh, it's love.
Yeah.
Love. With the sisters, and my counsel is very aligned to their methodology. So it's been a beautiful kind of um, partnership, even though they've never met each other. It is a partnership with me that's very aligned. But I talk about this in one of Diane McKendrick's books where I wrote a chapter, and I found that I didn't love myself probably really at all when I was with Robert. And that's got nothing to do with him. That's just because my identity was very much associated with my title of, his wife and this corporate executive and, this woman without any children, because I hadn't been able to have kids. And so looking back inside myself, although I was quite confident, although I came across like I did possibly love myself, but I didn't, I was still shaming myself about my body, whether it was my hair, my looks. I was shaming myself about my intelligence and that came in a few times with some bosses at my corporate role, that I'd been over promoted and that I wasn't as creative or strategic as I needed to be. So a lot of criticism through that period. And then when Robert was sick, like I had 6 years of, at least 18 months, two down from the CEO. I'm working these hours. I'm doing meetings from hospital rooms from while he's getting chemotherapy, I'm on meetings. He's criticizing me for, not being there fully for him or maybe disrupting somebody in the hospital. They're saying to me, Suzanne, we can't hear you. You need to speak up louder. Like there was this whole conflict, and it was just, you're not here for me and you're not here for me. So that whole kind of self-love wasn't possible. But then I still remember the day after a really big weekend, and I wasn't proud of myself. I'd kind of gotten to that point where I was like, oh Jesus, Suzanne, you've really dishonored yourself. You put yourself in a situation and you've dishonored yourself, and you've got to like own this and show up for this. And I looked in the mirror and I said, I don't want to see this version of me anymore. I was sad. My skin was awful. I had psoriasis in my hair. My nails were breaking. I even remember, like, I had, well, I'd just, been basically drunk for a week. And I'm like, you can't keep doing this to yourself. Like, that is it. And I stood in front of myself and I said, I'm going to love you, but I'm not going to love this version of you that's standing in front of me. I'm going to find a way out of this and I'm going to love her. And that was the first moment that I said to myself, that's enough. We've had enough. And then once at that stage, I was working with Michelle and Diane, and then the mirror work every morning. I love you, Suzanne. That was the first thing I did. I'd get up, go to the bathroom, wash my hands, and as I'm washing my hands, I'd say I'd love you. I had a gratitude journal, which actually that's really funny. I've got it right here now. This is the one I'm using at the moment, and I'd write down everything I was grateful for, but grateful about myself. That I am a beautiful person, that I do have beautiful hair, that I have got a beautiful body, and that I can achieve things. So then I'd write down, I washed my hair this morning, I did the dishes, I did the washing. And I just started to build love into my life for myself because I knew if I was going to meet a new partner, I had to love me first because whatever they brought with them, I was going to have to be strong enough to tackle all of that. But I made I made the commitment to me that if you love yourself, then you have the ability to love anyone else and give as much love as you can. But you have to have and own and feel your own love first.
Mm, it's so powerful because, like, well, I'm 48, and it's almost like the first time in my life where I actually get that whole concept because,
Mm,
growing up, it's almost like, well, you just give to everybody else. But we're not
mm,
actually taught how to give back to ourselves. Like we talk about self-care, self-love, but self-care is not just taking a bath. Like there's so
no.
much more to it that needs to be talked about in the world so that, when women are growing up, and it's not just women, like men and women need to understand self-love. They need to understand
Mhm.
that in order for you to make any changes, for order for you to truly love somebody else, you need to love yourself so you can teach them how to love you as well.
Yeah, yeah. And you need forgiveness, Christine, right?
Yeah.
Because we've all done silly things, right? And that brings on shame. And then that brings on, lots of negative energy towards yourself. I can't remember, it must have been last weekend, maybe the weekend before, I was, at one of these festivals and somebody actually said, talk to yourself like you're talking to your best friend.
Yeah.
Give yourself the love that you would give your best friend. And it just made total sense. Like, why do we just offer all this love and all this care and forgiveness and kindness to everybody else and then basically put ourselves in the corner and criticize the hell out of us, even though what we typically are as humans are beautiful, beautiful people, but we don't then bring all that beauty back to ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also the fact that I mean, I see the gifts in everybody else. And it was really reminded me today, like how much of our own gifts, like we dull down. And, it's like working on paradigms and all of that at the moment. And I'm like going, wow, like this has just opened my eyes up so much more that we dull ourselves down because we think that we're too much or maybe not enough for the people in our circle. But that all comes back down to
Yeah.
self-love.
Yes, it does. It does. And I think there's you know, I talk a lot in my books around, what we were given as guidance as children. In my book, From Wife to Widow, I talk about how the first death that I truly remember was my grandmother. And I still remember going to my grandfather's house with my mum in a taxi. Mum said to us, "You and Paul go out the back to play. I need to go and speak to your grandfather." At that stage, all I knew that my dad was away. My mum had made a phone call. Or received a phone call. She's crying. But to go and then tell my grandfather that his wife had died, my mum asked us to go out the back, and not to come in until we were asked to come in. So the grieving process was not something that was openly understood. We, as a Western society, and I say this, Australians, we're not good at a lot of things. One is grief, and the other one is loving ourselves, right? Again, as a child, we're always told to respect our elders, love our elders. Like you think of all the kind of things that we're told as
Yeah.
children. Nobody, you got to love your mother, you got to love your father, you got to love your brother. You get told these things. Nobody says, but at the end of the day, most importantly, you got to love yourself. I do not remember that. And that's not a criticism to my parents. That's just the generations that have come before them. They've never known how to do that because they worked hard, right? They worked hard, they had children, they gave their love to their children. I have the conversation with my husband right now around how much love do you give to your children, but then give to yourself. Like,
Yeah.
it's just not part of the
No.
vocabulary. It's not part of the vernacular conversation that we have here.
No, not at all. And I mean, no, like on my parents, like they only did with what they had the information, back then.
Mm.
But yeah, it was really interesting. And I strongly remember the first death in our family, and it was not a nice. My auntie was murdered, and like, but it
Oh,
was like a big
God.
secret sort of thing. Like, like where
Yeah.
you can't say stuff about this, and we weren't even allowed to go to the funeral. Like there was a whole heap of different things. So it's a really interesting concept now, but I don't think a lot of people go, oh, well, I'm too old. I'm too, like, I can't change and all of that. But I think the message that I want people to get from this is like, it doesn't matter. Like, age actually has no boundary. Like, it doesn't matter
Oh,
about that. It's like the
no.
time is now. If you're hearing this, your time is now to give back to yourself. And we've
Yes.
all gone through stuff, regardless of how big, little, or whatever you might think it is. But we've all
Mm.
gone through some sort of, I'll call it commotion because it sort of shakes everything up in your world. And
Yeah.
that shake up is what we actually do need to be able to remind ourselves to give back.
Yeah. Yeah. And, there's a level of wounding
Mm.
and victim mentality in our society at the moment as well, is that we have to always have a reasonable reason to outside event, an outside person, something environmental that
Yeah.
caused us to be sad, right? But we got to look deep down inside. Yes, there were days where I was really, really sad, where I was possibly even angry. But somehow I pulled myself together and I got to that event, or I went, okay, well, I'll go and do this, or I got myself out of bed, or I cleaned my teeth, whatever it looked like. I think we've lost because we don't love ourselves, we're always looking for external love. And
Yeah.
so when you're looking for external love and then you can't find that, then again, that victim mentality, that poor me syndrome, that, oh, I've got to go and tell everybody about how bad my life is. And I am guilty of it. Like, I am the first one to
Yeah.
say that I have done a lot of that.
Yeah.
The one thing I don't do though now is I don't do it now. And that's, I'm a 52-year-old woman. Yes, I've learnt through the events of my life, but I've truly kind of dug really deep and thought about it. And I thought, no, you know what? Even if I'm having the worst day of my life, there can always be a glimmer of joy. I can always find a glimmer of joy, whether it's been in a book that I've read, whether it's maybe seen something on social media, whether it's on TV, maybe whether it's just going outside and seeing the sun shining down on me, and then, that beautiful feeling of, heat on my skin. We can always feel joy in the deepest, darkest moments. On that day that my husband died, there was still joy in my life because I was surrounded by people. I had a memory which I was very grateful for, 22 years on this earth with this beautiful man. There was still joy even on the day of his funeral. There was still joy on his anniversary, right? Every day I look and I find it. When you stop looking to find love inside, or you stop looking to find joy in your day, that's your point in time where you've got to say enough is enough. That's your point in time where you've got to find the right support, the right community to help you step out of that, because that isn't living life. And that's what I've learned, is that I want to live my life to the absolute fullest, and finding joy and love is what enables me to do that.
Yeah, I love it. I love the fact that you've also created sort of like a community yourself. Like you have these monthly, meetings as well for people to come in. And, I've been so, fortunate I got to attend because we're talking about grief. I lost my dad a couple of years ago. And, like I was saying, like there's all these little moments that happen, but it's also the identity change, that you go through with it. And that community that you are now bringing in, I think is so widely needed that, we all experience grief in such a different way. And it's not like, oh, mine's
Mm.
bigger than yours, or, those sorts of
No,
things that,
no.
we do, we compare going,
Yeah.
oh, but mine's not as bad as yours. So that's okay, you go. But that's again the actual lack of self-love that we have for ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. And that we have to play grief ping pong is what I call it. So, when somebody, empathy is, nobody really, even I shouldn't say nobody, a lot of people don't truly understand what empathy looks like. And so grief ping pong looks like, it'll be okay. I remember when my dad died. It'll be okay. I remember when my business fell over too. It'll be okay. I remember when I lost my marriage, because obviously grief is bigger than just the person. And then you start to have this ping pong, because then the person who is in the depths of their grief, they start to get angry, because it's like, I don't want to hear about your grief story right now. It's actually not important as mine. And guess what? It's not. So one thing that I have started to do a bit of, and I did it last weekend, I had this beautiful lady. So as I said previously, there was a lady at this festival. She'd lost her husband unexpectedly 7 weeks beforehand. Here she is at this festival. She's got two young girls. I think they were 5 and 2, or 5 and 3. The 3-year-old found dad. And he'd passed away in her bed, right? It was just such a tragic, damn like story. But she's sitting there crying. And one of her girlfriends at the end of the day came up to me and she said, how do I support her? I've put this in place. We've got food, like a food kind of roster going. We're helping out with the kids and everything. What else can I do? And I just wrapped my arms around her, Christine, and I said, "Do you don't understand right now how beautiful you are?" And she's like, "Okay." And I'm like, "No. When people ask me, how can I support them? And it's not just because you want to do the grief ping pong, or you want to be this supportive friend. You're actually saying to me, I actually don't know how to do this because I've never been there. But she said to me, I could only imagine what it must feel like. And you've been there, so can you give me the guidance of how I actually truly support her?" And the lady who was grieving said to me, she's had people that have said to her already, I don't know how you must feel right now. And her answer was, well, if you put yourself in my shoes, you can. Imagine. And that's what I'm trying to educate people on. One, just support and hold space. People sometimes don't need to tell the story over again. They don't need your story. They don't need the solutions of how to do things because that's quite unhelpful as well. But they also need the flip side of if that was me, I'd be exactly like you right now, right? If that was happening to me, I don't know what I would do. So I get that you don't know how to do it either. Like we can all put ourselves in somebody else's shoes if we truly want to. And if you do that with grief and then you put the empathy in a place that's not about you and is about the other person, then you can truly support somebody. But again, we're not educated on that. And so I just love when I hear from a person that says, my mum's passed away. What do I do for my mum's passed away. How do I support my dad? You know, my brother passed away. How do I support my mum and dad? Like, you know, that that gives me the most joy. Of course, I sit with widows and people that have lost, but when people want to know how to support, that's the most beautiful. I think that's when humanity is really
Yeah,
shining because they're truly wanting to do something that they have never had any experience in. And that's what you need when you want to support somebody in grief.
absolutely. Absolutely. But you know how much I love, adore you. I think you're a beautiful human being. Just absolutely amazing. How can people work with you? Because I strongly encourage anyone, like any type of grief that we've gone through, even just losing your own identity, like we go through shift and change. That's a grief in itself. So how
Yeah.
can, the people listening, connect with you? We're going to pop all your details below, but how can they come and work with you? Because I think everybody should be doing something like this.
Yeah, thanks, Christine. So I've got my social media profiles, which is Life Beyond the Grief on Facebook and Life Beyond the Grief Mentoring on Instagram. I've also got my LinkedIn profile, Suzanne.Read, and I also have got my maiden names with this Kinnaburra and Gomes on that. I've got a website, www.suzanne, S-U-Z-A-N-N-E, Gomes, Gomes.com.au. And I've also got my email address, hello@suzannegomes.com.au. As you said previously, I do run a monthly grief couch, which is either on the first Monday or Tuesday of the month. And that's an hour and a half session. It only costs $15 to come. You can actually bring a friend, which I really encourage. So I've got a 2-for-1 offer with that. And I just talk about different elements of grief. On this, I think it's the 8th. I think it's the 8th. There you go. Now that's tested me. It might be the 6th, actually. Sorry, it's the 6th of October, is the next one, and it's grief at work. So, how do you manage your career and work when you're grieving? But then also on the flip side, as a boss, as a colleague, how do you actually support somebody that's grieving, that's lost something or someone in their life? Because we bring grief to work on a regular basis, and a lot of us don't know then how to manage that in work, but we to actually then ask for support, but then we also don't know how to support others. So yeah, and I have retreats, I have mentoring, I've got my podcast, Life Beyond the Grief, which is on Spotify. There's some really great episodes on that, again just giving some guidance around different aspects of grief and some amazing interviews. I've got 2 interviews this afternoon that I'm doing, a lady who lost her son to suicide and a couple that were both widows that have now partnered and have got a beautiful love story. So, there's a number of ways to contact me. And yeah, I truly don't believe that people understand the support that they really do need to live and believe in themselves again. So I'm definitely open. Oh, and I have my healing practices, of course, as well. So yeah, there's lots to offer.
I know, you're
And of course, the
amazing.
beautiful retreat here, Coolabine Retreat, which is where I hold a lot of it.
Yeah,
So yeah,
I'm hoping to get up there very soon, have a weekend
yes,
away. So
definitely.
amazing. Before you go, we normally ask our guests just some fun little questions just to sort of, get to know you a little bit. So the
Yep.
first question I'd love to know is if you've got some spare time, would you prefer to watch a movie or curl up with a book?
A book. Ask my family. I cannot watch movies. I used to be
Okay.
a massive movie goer when I
Yeah.
was in my 20s, but not anymore. So
Yeah.
definitely a book. And this room is surrounded with books.
Yeah. So I was going to ask, are you a Kindle type person or are you a physical book?
No, I have physical book, but I am a multi-book person. So I've
Yeah.
got 4 books on the go at the moment,
Yeah.
3 beside my bed and 1 on here. So that's my emergency one when, sometimes you're just sitting somewhere and you're waiting in the doctor's surgery or
Yeah.
something. And then, yeah, I have that on there.
Yeah. I totally get that. I've got 3 beside my bed right now, actually. So, and I flip between
Yeah.
them depending on the mood, of what I
Yeah,
need.
exactly.
Yeah, with it. So I totally understand it. If you were to travel to your like favorite dream destination, would you prefer to travel by
Hmm.
plane or by boat?
Oh, God, that's really stumped me now because I never used to be a boat person, but I went on a cruise last year with the family. Um, I I think a plane because I love just getting there and just being, immersed in like where I am and the culture and um, yeah, I think I like going on cruises now, but especially if I'm going to my dream
Yeah,
destination, then no, I'd rather just
yeah,
get there and get into it.
yeah, yeah. If you could have a dinner party, now you're allowed to
Mm.
invite one guest from either the past or the present. Who would that one guest be?
Oh, oh, that's easy.
Okay.
Mel Robbins, right? So
Oh, she's
I
coming next
listen.
year.
I know, and do you know that I'm actually away in Vietnam? I'm like,
Oh,
no. So I listen to all her podcasts.
yes.
I am like in love with that woman.
Oh, yes.
Like she just inspires me. The research, the quality of the interviewees that she
Yeah.
gets on her podcast. I've read her book, Let Them, twice. I've lent and have I got my copy here? Oh no, I've got a copy there in the back, the green one. And I just love her
Yeah.
theory, and it really, really helped me. And I recommend that book now to anyone that I mentor. So it'd be Mel Robbins, and
Yeah.
oh God, I'd be holding her hand, I think, the whole
Yeah.
dinner.
I know. I know. She's absolutely amazing with it. Now, the last question I have for you, if you could describe yourself in one word, what would it be?
Just love.
Love. Yeah.
I'm just full of love.
Yeah.
Anybody that trusts me, respects me, gets my full love. It's really interesting. I'm visualizing myself right now and I've got this heart around me.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah, my heart is very full these days. That doesn't mean things don't challenge me and I don't get angry, but I always step back to love
Yeah.
as number one most important piece of my life. So I just think I'm full, and hopefully the listeners and the viewers can see
Yeah.
that I glow with love.
Yeah, no, you definitely do. And you give the best hugs too. They're like so intentional. Like it's just, like some people are just like me, oh hi, like this, like you like fully embrace and like give like
Oh,
the best
yeah.
hugs. So yeah, amazing.
And
So
I read this thing many years ago, Christine, that if you don't, an intentional hug is more than 3 seconds.
mm,
Now, for those out there that that just give those maybe hugs, three
yeah.
seconds is a long time. I'm a 5 second hugger.
Oh yeah, I'm longer than that. Like you have to throw me away. So the grandkids are like, oh come on, and I'm like,
Yeah.
no, come on, a bit more, a little bit
I
more.
had my little granddaughter here last night and the grandson, and we do snuggles in the bed before we get up. And she's like, Zanny, snuggle time. And she gets in and she holds me and she's like,
Yeah,
she just, yeah. So from that little young age, yeah, I'm nurturing them to,
yeah.
be full of love.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you're absolutely amazing. We're going to pop all the details. I hope people can reach out to you below. Thank you so much for being on the show today and sharing
Thank
your gifts.
you. Thank you so much, Christine. It's been an amazing gift to have met you and be on your show today.
Thank you so much, beautiful. To all of those watching this episode, remember to live life to the fullest every single day. Love and light to you all.
Mm.